because it looked good and it was bringing a game that I used to love. So I put this up like a year ago on, I don't know, some website or something. And then I read in Kotaku a week or two ago, or maybe 3, that Apple has applied for some patents for putting your iPhone in a little like D-pad controller. You put it in there and you have it's your screen now and you have a D-pad controller. I'm like, God, it's like I should have done something about it. I nearly had a hand in something really good. No, but seriously, like I would love to use my iPhone as a little NES, style emulator, but with these games that the iPhone's capable of doing. Anyway, other examples. What's like? Who has a cross to bear for some game that could have been so awesome except for X? In the back.
For me, it was Legend. And in that game, it's just that RTS sort of style they put in there just kind of ruined that hack and slash funness of sort of.
So sort of the wrong mechanic for what your game experience was anticipated to be.
Yeah. There was just a demo that was so hack and slash.
Oh yeah. A little bit of bait and switch there, not intentionally, but I mean you're like gearing up for Bayonetta or something, and you get Supreme Commander. You're like, so difference between picking and choosing. What's the difference between picking and choosing? Anyone know? So picking is like, I guess this will do. Choosing is this. I made a choice, So conscious choice, of course, like sometimes, in other words, you got to think about what you're doing. I guess that's so obvious that I should be kicked out of this auditorium right now for even saying that. But, sometimes these things in the heat of the battle, the heat of development, I've been guilty of picking. Sometimes you don't have time, but obviously it doesn't generally work out. Sculpting, we all learn from what other people are doing. There's not that many original mechanics out there. There's original packaging. I mean, Portal's a pretty original mechanic. But this whole deal, and people have heard me wax on the patenting, scares the crap out of me. Not because I fully agree with IP law, but the idea of some of these things of being obvious next steps in game design that are being patented and are going to come back, as they call them, submarine patents, to when you publish your game, and then guy jumps out of the woods and says, I patented ×2 bonus multiplier. And you're like, uh-oh. After, of course, your game is released and you've been making money, and now he has a claim. But the science is something that I love, and I come from a scientific background, fine. But art as well, like game design is art. So not just, it's not just the rigors of analysis of figuring out what's best. It's the art of choosing. So, okay. Now would be a good time to play a little game called Eat the Cookie. Who likes cookies? Okay, you like cookies. Who else likes to? Okay, there's 2 right there. So you're close. This helps. Pardon me, Andrew. So you get to break the cookie into exactly 2 pieces, and then he gets to choose whichever piece he wants. Oh, we have a cooperator. Okay, irrational, but that's fine. Here. Actually, which is a good example of you just never can count on rationality. So there, there's another little game which we'll get to, utility. But I'm assuming you both like cookies because I asked you, and I would assume you answer honestly. We'll get back to that. Actually, who's tired? Be honest, I can tell. If you're asleep, I know you're tired. Okay, who's not tired? Everyone who's not tired, stand up. Cool. Okay. Shake it out. You guys are the ones that aren't tired, right? Yeah, I mean, that's what you said. Okay, kind of like, nice little stretch. Okay, have a seat. We'll get back to that one. So what is a game mechanic, really? It's a function. In mathematician terms, what's a function? Well, it's a black box where you put an input in, you get an output out. You can describe it both in terms of an equation, y equals x. That's a very simple linear function. Y equals mx plus b, sorry, that's a very simple linear function. Y equals x is more of a point. Gravity, shooting, all mechanics in my mind can be broken down to an equation or to a line, not necessarily you want to. They can take a lot of different shapes. Your enthusiasm for the lecture, of course, you were questioning at first, but now you're peaked. My energy, sinusoidal, peaks and valleys, linear, nonlinear, There's an article there if you want to read more about characterization mechanic. I believe that ties into some things, but I'm not going to dwell on it. This is the incredibly complex mechanic of gold income for number of mines for Age of Empires DS. It didn't always start that way. There was a while when I convinced myself that the more mines you get, there's an economy of scale, and that either your overall production should increase, or perhaps there's kind of a penalty there. Like the old Civilization, one of the versions where the bigger your civilization got, the more corruption, and eventually it would kind of eat. You just couldn't. Adding a new city didn't help; it actually hurt you. But eventually it came back. It settled on a linear mechanic, which kind of brings up the old adage of keep it simple, stupid, which is something I use in game design daily, whether it's board game, video games. Something should only be as complex as it needs to be, which is, of course, a really loaded statement. But unless you have a compelling reason, make it simple. EVE Online insurance policies. I think this was, I forget which ship this was, but I could pay nothing and you're insured part value, which was, I guess, nice of them. Or you could pay on up to, I think, close to 90% of the ship value or something like that. Ticket to Ride. How many played Ticket to Ride, the board game? Cool. I think this was from Ticket to Ride Europe, but basically you have these cards in your hand that are color-coded trains. You play them on the board. You try to play like three reds at a time. You can claim a 3-length red route on the board. But the size of route that you claim was not a linear progression in terms of points, and points are how you win the game. We assume that people want to win. And this was a really important choice from the designer that would have resulted in a completely different game if he had made it linear. But basically, Alan Moon decided, okay, well, there's a reason, if you're going to save and pass up this opportunity cost of claiming all these little routes, you can get a really big reward. But while you're sitting there waiting, your opponents might be like laying down really important routes that then are going to screw you out of being able to achieve your victory conditions. What is this from? Every role-playing game ever created, not counting the last 2 years where now they're on flat progression. Yeah, D&D. This is classic D&D. Probably D&D, basic D&D, expert D&D, D&D 1, D&D 2, D&D 3, maybe 3, not 4, I don't think, right? But basically, like, you kill some rats, you get a couple XP, you gain levels really fast. Pretty soon, it's harder and harder and harder until you eventually get up in the millions, right? Somewhere around level 18, I don't know. I have 1 million experience points. Why do you think Gygax or Arneson or whoever made this curve originally did an exponential sort of shape? Anyone have a guess? I'm not leading up like previously where I'm going to say me neither. I don't know. No guesses? Okay. Yeah? Yeah, I mean, that's right. It's pretty much like when you kill a kobold, you get 5 XP. When you kill the arch great red dragon, you get 200,000 XP. The only way to make that happen then is to slope the thing so that you don't gain 200 levels when you kill the dragon. At that point, you're assumed to be powerful. So killing a dragon, while heroic, is maybe equivalent to killing. Do you remember Keep on the Borderlands where there was like one passage, it's like, this kobold is so tough he wields a battle axe. That was always my favorite line. It's just like, because they're like short little dog-nosed guys, forget it. But lately we're seeing a lot of, because the alternative to this is you have a straight line progression where every 1,000 XP is a level, right? Such as, what games do that? Mass Effect 2. Fallout 3, I think, right? If I'm not mistaken. There seems to be, that's the new level progression thing. But the downside of that is the only way to make that work is everything has to be judged by a challenge difficulty. Like D&D 4th edition does this, right? Where like, for a group of 5 characters of this level, a proper challenge encounter should yield. In fact, D&D 4, like if you ask me, they went way too far, way too mechanical in this direction. They lost a lot of the flavor. But basically, you have to then, a kobold, if he's challenging for you at your first level, he awards 10 XP. If you're eventually super powerful, a great red dragon is equivalent to a kobold to you, he's worth 10 XP. So that's the other way to do it. And it's not necessarily bad. I'm just saying, but you sacrifice a little bit of the flavor. The plus side is it's a lot more straightforward. Like you have 30,000 XP, well, I know you're level 30. It's much simpler. It's all trade-offs, right? I'm not saying one's right, one's wrong. Going back to our friend physics, how a car behaves, and this might, maybe this should be time and this is speed. They both kind of work this way, but basically this, again, we have a mental model. We know that In low gears, you have a lot of torque. You're able to accelerate pretty fast. Higher gears, you know, when you're in fifth gear on the highway and you go to pass the semi, what do? You downshift, right? Because your acceleration in fifth gear sucks. So logical. Okay. So we're going to talk. Yeah, we're on time. Talk a little bit about a couple mechanics in detail. Feedback loops. Matt mentioned the Bioshock feedback loop in his last lecture. I thought that was kind of cool. What's a feedback loop? Anyone find a feedback loop? It's a corrective control system. The classic example of feedback loop is a thermostat. You have a sensor. And I speak Fahrenheit, by the way, so apologies if any of you ne parlez pas the Fahrenheit. But ne parle pas, sorry. So you want the room to be 70 degrees. The sensor, the thermostat, senses it's 68. What does it do? That's the comparator. It goes to the logic. It says, oh, you wanted it to be 70. It's 68. We're 2 degrees too low. We're 2 degrees too low. I imagine those guys in the engine room getting all excited. So then it turns on the heater. OK, we go up a degree. Sensor says, what's our temp? 69 degrees. Where do we want to be? 70. Keep it going. OK, now we're up at 70. What do we want to be? 70. OK, shut it off. So that's your classic example of feedback loop. Now, feedback loops are everywhere in games. Yeah, enough about real life. Rubber banding, AI cheating, Left 4 Dead game director. And more appropriately on that Left 4 Dead, I have a question on that I'm hoping somebody can solve. I'm feeling a bit burned by Left 4 Dead 2 at the moment. But negative feedback. That's when the feedback loop acts to decrease that difference that was detected. So a thermostat is a negative feedback loop. So you want it to be 70, it detects that you're 4 degrees too hot. What does it do? It turns on the air conditioner to lower that 4 degrees. It wants to reduce that 4 degrees. Negative has all these connotations, but all it means is sensing the difference, reducing it. Mario Kart is a negative feedback loop where if you're if you're behind, you're more likely to get the super boost or the turtle shells or whatever that will help you. That's because it knows you're behind. It's doing things to help you catch up, to reduce that difference. That's a negative feedback loop. Positive feedback, it's quite the opposite. That would be like in Mario Kart, you're ahead, and it starts dropping like super speed power-ups for you. We don't see that too much, but they are in games. You know, Civ, I think, kind of has that sort of thing. A lot of games do, and the benefits of those is that, well, the hazards and benefits is that they're unstable. But sometimes you want to hasten the end to a game, not drag it out. And of course, downsides to things like a negative feedback loop are feeling cheated, right? Well, I've done so well, and the guy's always on my tail.